The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Greetings, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I am your host, Craig Fahle. Very glad to have you with us today. We've got a lot to talk about. Of course, we're in the midst of the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump. And I've got some great columnists with me, or columnists? How about panelists? We'll call them panelists today. A couple of them are columnists, but Allan Lengel, of course, from Deadline Detroit, is trying to get himself on our screen at this moment. He will be joining us, I'm sure.
What happened? Can you hear me?
There you go. We got you now, Allan. Nancy Derringer is with us as well from Deadline Detroit. We appreciate it. And I thought I needed a couple of lawyers on the program today. Steve Fishman is back, as is Todd Perkins. We appreciate you both being here as well. Happy Friday, everybody.
Same to you, Craig.
Same to you.
All right. It has been an interesting 3 days of television for me. I have been watching nonstop, of course, as the House impeachment leaders make their case against Donald Trump, suggesting that he incited the violence that we saw at the Capitol. And it was pretty amazing to watch. I thought they did a very, very good job of making the case, directly linking Donald Trump to this. Very compelling. I realize that they're probably not going to vote to convict this guy, but I still think that this was an important exercise for a lot of different reasons. Nancy's nodding her head. I mean, I think there are a lot of Americans out there who maybe even supported Donald Trump that are realizing now that maybe this was not the guy to get behind.
I would say I would agree with that. And I think that this was some of the most emotionally moving, and I don't mean emotional in the sense that I'm feeling warm fuzzies or anything like that. I mean, this was some of the most moving testimony I think I've ever seen come out of Washington and probably anywhere else. I mean, I thought, help me out with the name of the Virgin Islands Representative Plaskett.
Yes.
What's her first name?
I've got to look it up. But
okay.
She was great.
Representative Plaskett. She was killer. I mean, she stood up there in that fabulous outfit that she had on and just laid the smack down on Trump and all of his evil minions. So I thought that was quite something.
Stacey Plaskett.
Yes, Stacey, but it didn't.
She was great, but like I said, every one of the people that the House picked did a good job in their presentation. And again, this was lengthy testimony that we heard and laying out this timeline and doing everything in this sort of methodical fashion, but keeping it interesting all the time. It didn't get into boring minutia. And I'm guessing from a lawyer's perspective, either Todd or Steve on this one, it's got to be nice when the evidence that you present is basically, the defendant's own words. That's got to be helpful, I'm guessing, when you're trying to make a case.
Well, I defer to Steve. Go, Steve, and I'll follow up.
I was about to say the same thing. Okay, so there's no doubt Todd and I both know, particularly in the last few years as you've had Facebook and Instagram and all these other social media things where our clients brilliantly go on there and confess to all kinds of crimes, hold their AK-47s up there and talk about what they just did on 7 Mile. There's nothing more compelling than the words of the defendant. And these guys did a terrific job of that. The second thing that we also have to contend with now, people like Todd and I, is that you got cameras everywhere. And in addition to the words that you hear from the defendant, you have the opportunity to see the effect of what the defendant was doing. Generally, in our cases, the defendant's talking and he's doing it at the same time. But we have cases where the defendant is talking and telling somebody else to do something, and there happens to be a camera out there on 7 Mile and Lasher, and it picks the entire thing up. So what these guys were able to do was to use Trump's own words and then show those images concurrently with them. And I love the way they had the timeline. That really was a very significant thing, because if you were paying attention at all and you're not just hopelessly drowning in Trump world, it was obvious what was going on, and it's obvious what he did to egg it on, and it's obviously what he didn't do to stop it. And it was all boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my thing is it's a little different than what Steve and I are used to as far as presenting evidence, because they have the full run of being able to tell you everything. That you don't hear objections like to hearsay and things of that nature. But what I would have loved to have seen is if Steve, I think you might agree with this, is if they did this almost like a federal case, like they go to some of those individuals that they've indicted criminally, and then they turn them. And they say, I'm going to offer you a deal to come testify. And so that would be the coup de grace if they could have an individual who would connect them, because you saw how that timeline, as Steve is talking about, how the timeline, even before January 6th, how it was leading up to January 6th, the coordination of fundraising, the coordination of these individuals getting there, the coordination of all these things that culminated on January 6th. And then this guy says, yeah, it's almost like old school. He says, we're going to go streaking down at the mall. You know what I'm saying? And, he sends those people down there, and then he turns around and runs back to the White House. And then that timeline talking about he's describing these people as low class. So, if I were the people themselves, I would be upset with, him. But they're so blinded by this, I don't know what it is. I mean, you can argue that it's mostly about race with a lot of these people. But, they're so blinded by him that they don't even understand he doesn't like them either. They're just pawns.
Right.
Go ahead, Allan.
There's an argument whether this should happen or not. But I think for the two lawyers who are very familiar with jury nullification in some of the local courts here, we're clearly seeing a case where we're going to see, in all likelihood, jury nullification with the Senate. That they're just totally saying, blah, 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 blah. We don't want to hear the evidence. We don't care. We're not convicting him. Still, that's not a good enough reason. I mean, if the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office decided, well, we're not going to charge this guy with murder because we're going to get nullified by the jury. I mean, you have to go through the justice system. And I think this is a good reason to go through this process and at least lay it out and say, here are the crimes, particularly in a president. And they talk about they're going to today try to defend him and say the Democrats tried to stir stuff up. But this is beyond even First Amendment issues. This is about ethics. This is about the decency of a president. We would never, ever see another president do what this guy has done.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. And I'm all for letting America see exactly what went down in this day and going through it piece by piece by piece, because again, I think some people will be turned. Some people are going to realize that they supported the wrong guy, and they'll maybe not make the same mistake again. And for me, that's the most important thing. We're going to get some Republican votes to convict. There will be a few, not enough, but enough that it shows that this is a bipartisan thing and there was enough evidence to actually convict this guy. And that's important to me.
And the point is that I can't remember, it was Jamie Raskin or one of the other management guys there. But they were saying, look, the guy could run again and do the exact same thing again, say that this election was rigged and get people riled again. They need to put an end to it. And I think we're seeing sort of the formation of potentially a third party now. Where people are sick of, they want to have conservative views, but they want to have integrity.
Well, they've got to peel back and get rid of the racists and the white supremacists amongst them. I mean, that's a big problem they have right now, and the fact that they are scared. That so many of these senators are scared to go against that wing of the party is really, really depressing. Well, I
disagree with that. I think that they're just
depressing to me.
They fall into this trap of just this white world that they have, because you think about it. If you were talking about the real honest play, if I was a Republican, I would convict him and it takes him out all the way. I mean, he could go raise money, he could go support candidates and things like that. But I do applaud the Democrats for this moral victory. But, one of the things I could easily see, they're very staunch in their positions and they're very structured in their arguments, but I don't see if I were to critique them, if we were like on SportsCenter, we're critiquing the day after, it's just like like I've seen and watched, Fishman. he's quick on his feet. And, and when was it Josh Hawley put his feet up on the desk? Yeah. I can easily see one of these Frank Murphy lawyers, or, how I've learned from people like Fishman and, Evelyn and those guys, they would turn right then and say, look, this is the very thing that we're trying to fight against, is that recalcitrant behavior and, and just defiant behavior, this arrogance. You've got your feet up on the desk, and you were one of the ones who were sitting out here with the thumbs up, and saying, the day of, so, those are the types of things that it's not just for Americans turning them. It's like the civil rights movement from the 60s. That was about the whole world seeing the ugliness of America. That's the way that you come out. Like, we're out here in other parts of the world telling Vietnam how they should be living, but yet you got Bull Connor hosing young girls and women and men down in the middle of the street, and that was before my time. But so, I talk about it, because, I talk about it. I mentioned Fishman a lot because I talked to him a lot about the civil rights movement, having having been a high school student at the time, so, I see these things, and, I'm just, this is not just for America. This is for the world to see us on this.
I wish that the Senate would allow cameras to actually pan what's going on in the chamber while this is actually taking place. They have the one camera and it's just on the speaker, but you should be able to look around so you can see how people are reacting to this, whether or not they're actually paying attention to the evidence that's being presented. They do it for State of the Union. They can have the camera shots of various people in the audience, but they don't allow it for the Senate proceedings. And I think it would be helpful for people to see who actually is taking this seriously and who's blowing it off, because we do know that a bunch of them didn't even bother to show up yesterday.
Well, it's interesting.
I don't have cable, so I've been watching the New York Times stream on their website, and they have their reporters watching it at the same time, many of whom are actually in the chamber or observing, and they've been offering some of that. And in fact, I think my Schmuck of the week is probably going to be one of those guys. So
well, that's fine. We don't want to give that away yet, but
no, we don't. No,
that's good.
So here's what I take away from what I've been listening to you guys, and then thinking about what Todd said about turning people, the government being able to turn defendants into witnesses against Trump. I think that's happening. I think I told you guys on this show before, I said, wait till the lawyers get a hold of these guys, because any lawyer worth his or her salt is going to sit somebody down and say, look, you've been charged with these crimes. You're looking at, 120 months. You have an opportunity to cooperate. I personally believe that it's going to take a little time, as we said, about arresting all the different people that they wanted to charge. But at some point in time, these guys are going to cooperate, and then it'll be up to some U.S. attorney in the district or wherever as to whether to indict Trump, quite frankly, based on the testimony that they get from other people. The second thing is, if you want to know how disingenuous the defense of this is, think about what they did. They started out with the defense of the statute of limitations has basically passed.
Yes.
And then all of these constitutional lawyers, including Mr. Cooper, who has represented every right-wing group there ever has been in the entire world, come forward and say that's horseshit. So then they abandon that one. Then they turn to the free speech defense, right? And we know for sure that's horseshit. Joyce Vance was on MSNBC early this morning. She just destroyed it in 4 minutes, basically, of conversation. And now they're down to, well, the Democrats did the same thing. It's like two guys in the playground. You're another. No, you're another. No, you're another. So you can tell that they have really no defense. The lawyers stink, but they didn't have a whole hell of a lot to work with if you think about it.
Well,
I think my screen is frozen. Can you hear me, though?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
All right. So I was going to say, I mean, the whole process, though, presenting it as a trial, it's sort of funny because, I mean, these guys are jurors. I mean, where else do we see a jury where the jury says before, he goes, are you kidding? I don't care what you tell me. I'm not going to convict. Then you have Ted Cruz one of the jurors working with the defense attorneys, telling them how to present the case. I mean, there's a lot of flaws to the process.
Well, yeah, it clearly is a political process as opposed to a legal one. I mean, this is like the only type of legal case that is like this, I'm guessing. Yeah, because you did have 3 senators, in fact, that were meeting with the defense team yesterday. Mike Lee of Utah, Ted Cruz, and it wasn't Josh Hawley. It was, I'm forgetting who else it was. But anyway, 3 people meeting with
Lindsey Graham. How could you forget him?
Of course, it was Lindsey Graham. That's right. Which, I'm not shocked by this. We know that those 3 are never going to vote to convict Donald Trump. because who knows what he has on them. That's the only thing I can think of. But, I do get the sense that some people are actually taking it seriously. If you listen to some of the comments that some of the senators have been talking after the first couple of days of testimony, it sounds like they're actually paying attention to this and that they're giving it real consideration. I don't know. Like I said, I'm hoping that we see somebody actually vote their conscience as opposed to their party loyalty or their loyalty to President Trump. I'm not sure we're going to see that. But Steve, you brought something up that was interesting about the defense. And I thought something that was really interesting that they did the other day was, hey, don't impeach the guy, just charge him with the crime. I mean, this is the defense attorney suggesting that, hey, if you really want to go after this guy, you should just charge him, which tells me that maybe they have something to charge him with if they really wanted to.
Well, I think that they could, but I agree with all of you guys who said that this is a public service to have this on national television so people can see exactly what we were up against for 4 years with this asshole. And I think that I agree with you guys also that they're not the dead weight MAGA people. You're never going to convince them of anything because they don't believe in facts. But I think there are a lot of people. I saw something on MSNBC this morning, some latest poll, like 120,000 Republicans or some large number of people had switched parties literally because of what you're seeing. So I think it's a service to keep on going. Let it be.
I wholeheartedly agree with it. And, I think that I said it on the last show that we had when we were talking about it. God love Letitia James. She's going to get him together. So, because, people don't realize the people in New York don't like Donald Trump. Right. And I didn't realize that until a couple of years ago because I didn't know enough about him until he got elected. I didn't realize that New Yorkers do not like him. And the state of New York does not like him. And that's where the real crimes that outside of what he's done, the high crimes and misdemeanors that he's done as president of the United States, but those are the crimes of, wire fraud that have concurrent jurisdiction, state and federal ability to charge him. And they're going to do that there. So I think that this is just the opportunity to take and bring him down to size so that he's not this, for lack of a better word, mega individual, mega MAGA, but at the same time, it's one more strike of showing who this individual is. So by the time it comes to pass that he ultimately gets charged, people will be okay with it. You won't see all this partisan politics. Go ahead, Steve.
No, following up on Todd's point, I agree with it 100%. The thing you guys have to remember, and I'm not going to say my usual, although I'm waiting for everybody to say I was correct all along that the man's a career criminal. But never mind that.
We've never
disputed that.
Remember the head this way, the criminal mind, the regular. Okay, but what Todd and I can tell you about the case that Letitia James is going to bring, there won't need to be in that case any kind of arguments about free speech, et cetera. And so what he basically did there is what he's done his whole career. He commits fraud by doing it in the obvious way. When he wants a loan, he lies and says that his stuff is huge. When he wants to go bankrupt, he lies on that kind of thing. Those kinds of fraud cases don't have anything to do with politics. They don't have anything to do with you're to the right or you're to the left. And if you get a jury of 12 people, they're going to be sitting there. Once you get past, it's Trump, it's Trump, it's Trump. Now you're down to a straight up, very simple to prove fraud case. And you won't need Michael Cohen to prove it because it'll be in black and white. Cohen will help, although obviously he has his baggage, but it's in black and white, and that's how they do those cases. And Todd and I have had any number of cases like that. Doesn't have anything to do with the personality of the person. They're just a lying sack of shit who presented lies to either a bank or the government and benefited from it, and that's fraud.
You can look at it like this. He values the property, the actual mechanics of it. He'll value the property at this rate so that he can get loans. He'll devalue the property for the purposes of tax exposure. And I'm sure he's done that every year. And let alone all the loans that he has that, from Deutsche Bank and all those other issues that will come to pass. But yeah, it's black and white. It's actually a very boring trial once you get beyond it. And it's very, like Steve says, these are ones where we're going to the prosecutor. I heard it when somebody on MSNBC last night, a real lawyer, not like what Trump has, but these real lawyers says, hey, after something like this is when you go to the other side and say, hey, what kind of deal you're going to get from me. What kind of Rule 11 agreement you got for me? Or I don't know what they do in the state of New York, but, what kind of plea agreement do you have for me?
Yeah,
go
ahead. I'm not worried about the four more years. I mean, it'd be nice if he could be convicted in the Senate and, barred from running for office again. But 4 years is a long time. Believe me, I just lived through the last 4, and I can tell you that he's going to be 8?
Yep.
By then, he's going to be 78. He's going to be completely bogged down with legal problems. There's no way.
Well, and the knives are out for him already. I mean, Nikki Haley yesterday, this story that came out in Politico this morning saying that, hey, he took us down the path. He lied to us. We shouldn't have followed him. We should not have done this. I mean, granted, she's already basically all but announced her candidacy. She's trying to raise money. But like I said, other politicians' ambition will stop Donald Trump from seeking another term because they're not going to just roll over. They're not going to roll over for this guy anymore.
Is that the world's tiniest violin playing for Nikki Haley?
Yes, so. I'm definitely not worried about that. But, like I said, though, there are other people that want this job. He is not the only Republican that would like to be the president of the United States. And after what he put this country through for the last 4 years and put them all through, I've heard senators recently saying, I'm just glad I'm not getting asked about a tweet every single day by reporters anymore. They like the fact that we are getting some semblance of normalcy back, and they see this as a potential path for themselves. All right, let's start focusing on what the current administration is doing. Where can we criticize Joe Biden? And I want to run for this job. Screw Donald Trump. Nikki Haley started it already. Even 2 weeks ago, she said, leave the poor guy alone. And now she's saying, we made a mistake. We got to get rid of him. He's fallen so far. So, there will be other people that will be more than happy to stick the knife in his back as soon as they can. So
that's going to be good.
Like I said, I'm not worried about the infighting in the Republican Party. They're going to have some fun.
Was it Napoleon or Sun Tzu who said, when your enemy is tearing itself apart, let them.
No. The line was, never murder a man when he's in the process of committing suicide.
There you go.
Well, that's about it.
I think at some point they have to decide whether they want to have some integrity or not. If they don't, there will be a split off. You have guys like Lindsey Graham, who, Rolling Stone put it best when somebody said Lindsey Graham needs to have a lion to look up to. And he had John McCain before. When John McCain passed, he turned to Trump. And he still needs that lion, apparently, because he can't let go. And it's really just pathetic.
I think I heard on the Pod Save America podcast that when in Obama's first term, Rahm Emanuel said Lindsey Graham was like office furniture. And, he was always stopping by to say hi. You're right. He's looking for a daddy. So not to,
Who's your daddy?
Stereotypes.
He's clearly not a leader of sorts. I mean, he's not a leader. What I say to a lot of these Republicans, I don't want to use the words on here, but I mean, they're cowards. They're cowards. If I was a Republican, I would go so hard against Donald Trump. But here's the problem. If I spent the last years, licking his heels, then what do I look like? Like a guy, I say this every week, or I say it every day to people when we talk about politics. The worst guy out there is a guy, Ted Cruz. I mean, he talked about this dude's daddy and his wife. But yet he's out here defending him. I mean,
he's the worst. So.
And he just looks. I mean, he's got a look that you just want to smack him.
Well, we've got one more day of this, right? We've got the defense today, and then of course there'll be apparently some Q&A that's going to take place potentially after that's over. I mean, I personally would like to see some witnesses called. Some of that testimony from the people who did storm the Capitol was actually introduced. I mean, they had, the statements from the lawyers saying, hey, these people say that Donald Trump told them to be there, as we are starting to see these cases, go to court. So there has been some of that, but I love the video that's out there where you have people screaming, Donald Trump told us to come here. It's like you don't need witnesses because you have all this videotape. These people tape themselves doing illegal shit. I mean, that's what's so great about this.
The work that went into presenting that whole, the timeline, the whole, matching the video of, okay, here's what the crowd was saying at the time he was saying this during the speech. That diagram with the ball that was followed around to show how close these people actually came to the people who were about to acquit the guy who essentially sent them there. I mean, all of that was the amount of work that went into that is staggering, but the result was fantastic.
I mean, and I think the thing for me that put it into perspective and the kind of thing that will turn people against Donald Trump is what Tommy Tuberville said yesterday, saying that I sent him a text saying that the vice president has been escorted out of the building and is in trouble. And like 12 minutes later, President Trump puts out a tweet saying Mike Pence let us down. And shortly thereafter, we hear, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. And people realize, wow, Mike Pence was nothing but loyal to Donald Trump to a fault. Obviously, we've been very critical of this guy on this program for good reason.
A guy who needs a daddy, man.
And then it's just like, I think that made people realize that this man, Donald Trump, will throw anybody under the bus, anybody, and was completely non-caring that this guy was in potential danger. I don't think Donald Trump would have been upset if Mike Pence had been killed, because then he could have,
no,
I don't think it would have bothered him.
Then he could have declared martial law and, whatever. I mean, I'm sure there would have been he would have pulled some shit.
Possibly. Hey, Todd, you got to turn on your microphone there. You're muted there.
I think
one of the things that Steve said a while ago was that, the way that if people were listening to you and Nancy talking, it's just like what Steve said. This guy is freaking crazy, man. He says one thing over here, and then he says one thing over here, and then you're talking about he wouldn't have minded. And I agree with you. He wouldn't have minded if Pence got killed. I mean, what kind of guy is this? Go ahead, Steve.
So here's two things based on what you guys were talking. Number one, I am not 100% certain that at the time of the riot in January that Tommy Tuberville knew who Mike Pence was. So I don't know that he would have, unless he played left tackle for Alabama or something. I don't think he knew who the guy was. That's number one. Number two, again, when you are talking about, we say this to the audience all the time, and I know I'm the one usually saying it, but it's very important for people to understand what a sociopath is. Todd and I have had the misfortune of knowing a few. Not that many. Most of our clients are just regular guys who like to do stuff different than other people do. But we have known some sociopaths. And when you make a statement like what you made, Craig, and I think Todd said the same, or maybe everybody agreed, that if Pence had been hung, he wouldn't have cared, that's 100% correct. The man is a sociopath. And unless you've been around sociopaths, it's really beyond human comprehension that there are people out there that have no empathy for others, none at all. And that's exactly what we've been dealing with for all of this time. And you can go back as far as you want in the guy's life, and he's not just a career offender and a career criminal, but he's a sociopathic career criminal, which can turn into a guy like Ted Bundy, for instance. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, and for me, I think one of the most effective arguments that was made too was when they were talking about the Capitol Police and the job that they actually did, and listening to some of the audio from these people and showing that video that we had yet to see about just how dangerous that situation was and how violent things were getting. And they made the point to the senators there, who are, of course, the jurors in this case, that, look, your voting to excuse this behavior is selling out the Capitol Police. And I thought they didn't say it that plainly, but that's what they were implying the whole time. These are the people that are sworn to protect you. A couple of them lost their lives as a result of the action that took place protecting you. And you're going to let the guy who made this happen go away scot-free? If I'm one of these Capitol Police, I'm like spitting at your feet every time you walk through the door. If you're one of these people that votes against conviction in this situation, because you're showing your contempt for them and the job that they do every day to protect you. You're just basically suggesting that you don't care about them or anything at all about them. And I thought that was a really, really important point, because the back the blue stuff is shown to be just that. It's bullshit. They don't mean it. They don't mean it. Obviously, they don't mean it. No. And, by voting against this and saying that this, we just got to move on, I think shows contempt for law enforcement. And I think they made a really, really good point in that effect.
That was my one of the first things I thought when I was listening to it. Is I was thinking about, I ride a bicycle for fitness in the summertime when weather permitting, and I rode all over the points. And first it was the change your porch light to a blue light bulb, and then it was the signs. And and there's a variety of signs, back to blue signs. And I can tell you that virtually every single one of those houses had a Trump sign in the yard this summer. And a lot of them, most of them have taken them down. Only the diehardiest people still have their Trump sign up. It's against the local ordinance. But for them to be simultaneously backing Donald Trump and this army of, just deplorables, and still claiming that they, we love and support our law enforcement. It's stomach turning. It's just, disgust is the only word you can.
Well, it's interesting. The term deplorables, when Hillary said that, it should still be applicable. For the fact is that the Republican Party should not be embracing the Proud Boys, the white supremacists. They should be the deplorables, and it's certainly not the majority of the Republican Party, but the Republican Party should make it clear you're not welcome in our party.
Well, they're going to have a hard time doing that, given what we've seen here in Lansing as well. This is not just a Washington phenomenon. Here in Michigan, Mike Shirkey gets caught on tape talking about January 6th as being a hoax. And suggesting that, again, it was Antifa or somebody that stormed the Capitol, despite all the evidence that we've seen to the contrary. This is
the dangerous part about it is these people actually want to believe that. They do. And these are the appointed leaders or elected leaders. But, I got a question for everyone. And I don't think, someone who's watching the show sent me this. And, I think there would be a different outcome as far as the vote for impeachment if they could vote by secret ballot.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but I think that quietly the ones who, and I have to retract some of that. I said all Republicans are cowards. I can't say that about Mitt Romney. I'm not a fan, but somewhere out there, how Mitt Romney got caught with the 47%. There's a tape out there with Donald Trump on it. We just haven't seen it. There's a tape, that
dropping the N-word?
Huh?
N-word?
A number of different things, but but coordinating that whole what they call the hoax on January 6th or whatever, but coordinating that, there's a tape somewhere and it'll come out, but whether it comes out, for this time, I don't think so, but it'll come out for his prosecution in the various different jurisdictions that he's going to be. But that's my question. Would there be a different outcome?
Absolutely. But that pisses me off even more, though, Todd. Because the fact that they would be willing to actually do the right thing if they could be anonymous, who are they afraid of? Who is it that they are afraid of if they indeed do the right thing?
They're afraid. They're not only afraid of Donald Trump, but they're afraid Donald Trump got 74 million votes. They're afraid of not getting the backing of the populace.
Well, like I said, but I do think that they would vote to convict if it was secret. And you know what? If you're the Democrats, do you give them that option? Or do they want this more to hang these people out to dry later and say, look, this guy voted against charging anybody, voted against a conviction of the guy that killed Capitol police officers.
This is a suicide mission for the Republican Party, and I don't understand why it's still going on. Early on, I think, we've talked about this before. There was this sense that, we're just going to let Donald Trump say what he's going to say. How many times did you hear the word or the phrase, let it play out? Let's take a look at this election. Maybe it really was stolen, and they knew it wasn't stolen. It's ridiculous. But now they let him go for too long, and now they're going to pay the price for it, and I have zero sympathy.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think that Todd's word, coward, is the correct word, by the way. And I agree with you guys that if it were a secret ballot, I think he'd be impeached. But what's fascinating to me, and it kind of goes to what Nancy's saying about the destruction of the Republican Party, these people, the Josh Hawleys, the Ted Cruzes, the Trumps, all of them, they're cowards. But at the same time, they're cowards because they're afraid of the so-called base. but at the same time, they're contemptuous of the same base. You catch these people off mic or whatever, and you hear what they really think of the people that are supporting them. They think they're stupid. They think you can tell them anything. They know for sure they're not doing anything for them. Obviously, they didn't want to send them any checks. They're willing to give, people who have a whole hell of a lot of money tax cuts. So they combine the cowardice of being scared of them with the contemptuousness that they accused Hillary Clinton of, and maybe she is contemptuous of the so-called deplorables. But these people, the Steve Bannon case of all the pardons, I thought that one was the most disgraceful, just because here you really had a case where you would see, look what they think of you guys. That you guys, they're W.C. Fields, and you guys are the fools that are born every minute. That's what gets me the most. That they don't even give a shit about their own people. At least the Democrats, I think, honestly care if black folk and Latinos and minorities and whatever. So that to me is something that's overwhelming.
Back in the day, I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can listen to a million conversations with LBJ and Nixon. They recorded every conversation, and I mean, there's one conversation where you can just get a peek into the anti-Semitism and racism of Nixon and Haldeman talking about spies. I think we've talked about this before, where Haldeman, Nixon says, well, you notice there's not a lot of Negro spies. And, he says, the Jews are really sneaky. He goes, and you notice there's not a lot of Negro spies. And Haldeman says, yeah, they're not smart enough. And you're just like, are you surprised? Yes, you're surprised to hear it, but every conversation was recorded. It'd be fantastic if we heard, well, I mean, we pretty much see through his tweets. I mean, there's not a lot of secrets to what
the stories that leaked about, for instance, that the most recent one is that that 4-hour meeting that happened sometime in January where Lindell and Sidney Powell and all the crazies were in the Oval Office, and apparently there was like shouting, and they were trying to get Trump to say, declare martial law, overturn the election, let the military rerun it. And the half sane people were screaming back at them. There were an awful lot of extremely detailed quotes from that. And I know somebody was recording that. All you have to do is just, hit a button on your phone. I mean, I have a watch that will turn on a voice.
Well, you know who found that out the hard way this week? Is Michigan Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey.
Exactly.
So Mike Shirkey let's get into that, because we've got to make sure that we get to this, because again, we just hinted at it a moment ago, but Mike Shirkey caught on tape and then again on a hot mic a little bit later talking about, again, among other things, the fact that he believes that the attack on the Capitol was a hoax, a false flag type operation, telling these people maybe just what they wanted to hear. I don't know, but he's meeting with the Hillsdale County Republicans. And then, of course, talking about how he wanted to get into a fist fight with Governor Whitmer, saying he smacked
and you know
her.
What? She'd kick his ass.
That's entirely possible.
I'm sure she's working out.
But, and then, of course, he gets caught on a hot mic basically saying, he issues this apology for what he said, and then he tells Garland Gilchrist, who of course is Lieutenant Governor, who is also the president of the Senate, and just says, hey, you know what? I stand by everything that I said on that tape.
Yeah.
Even after he issued the apology, which he didn't actually say. It was a statement that came from his office, which is always my favorite when you're too much of a wuss to even say it out loud. But Shirkey just showed who he is. And, I don't blame the governor or anybody on the Democratic side for saying, you know what, why are we trying to negotiate with these people? What is it that why are we trying to reach across the aisle to people who obviously don't hold us in any sort of esteem and don't necessarily really want to work with us in any way, shape, or form? And I think that's the big problem we have. All these calls for unity are who are you unifying with, and for what purpose?
Yeah. I mean, meet these people in the middle. Are you kidding me? Sorry, Bruce Springsteen. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've been reporting a story on that's going to run next week on, can I say Lengel?
Yes.
Yeah, on Melissa Carone. And I've been spending a lot of time on that, in that part of like Facebook and Twitter and stuff. These people believe everything. I mean, they, you just look at some of their postings, It's, well, Barack Obama passed a law that said that the media can lie. I mean, it's idiotic, and yet they believe this stuff. So the idea that we are supposed to like come together and join hands and in the middle of Kansas somewhere, forget it. So.
Well, but one thing that I think it looks like the polls are supporting this. One thing that the administration is doing is, rather than try to quote come together and sit and be able to agree after a debate, just pass legislation that benefits people. Yes. Human beings, and you can see the polls support that. So I think a lot of that other stuff, it's noise, and the media amplifies the noise because you guys have to have something to talk about. But really, I think that Biden is doing it the right way. I think they're focusing on getting things done. Look, we'll listen to you guys, but you guys don't want to come, then we're going to do it on our own. Well, and we're going to get money in people's hands. We're going to get problems solved, which is nothing has occurred for 4 years. Other than giving rich people a tax break.
Biden, we're talking about the state of Michigan now, though. So,
but you think about it, but it's still an agenda that this Republican, as my mom described us, these aren't Republicans. Milliken was a Republican. These are fascists. So let's get that out of, so let's establish that. But again, Steve started on it. He says tax breaks. Well, what Trump was there for, tax breaks, abortion, which is a Supreme Court pick. And then he was also with the legacy costs or the probate costs, also a tax, the inheritance tax.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the things that he was there for.
It's the death tax.
That's all he was there for, because what you have, is him protecting the white man who feels that his world is closing in on him, because now he's outnumbered by, if you let and give citizenship to immigrants who are here, the percentage of the white male, most poignantly, is going down precipitously. So, this is about protecting, what they feel are, make America great again. I think that's one of the most racist statements in the world, because if we haven't progressed and you want us to go back, then going back, it doesn't have any place for me or a lot of us in this, in this array today. So
it's interesting. A friend of mine this morning just texted me a quote from FDR saying, he says, anyone who has visited the Far East knows that the mixing of Asiatic blood with European or American blood produces in 9 out of 10 cases unfortunate results. So our country,
FDR said that?
Yeah, our country has a history of really.
Did you fact check that?
And my schmuck of the week is going to deal with this very question of America's legacy here.
Can I just make one quick point, though? There was a story today in the Detroit News about how Portage, Michigan, is by Neil Rubin, about how Portage, Michigan is it feels about Pfizer being like the fountain of the vaccine, right? And I'm reading through it, and I get a few paragraphs in, and there's some guy who works for Pfizer or something who says, I'm not taking that vaccine. He said, in 3 months I might grow a tail. I'm going to wait until everything's, until it's passed, and then I'll do it. And I was thinking about this, and I thought, were these people this crazy when the pie was a little more fairly divided? I mean, I think about these guys who are looking at their adult children right now, sitting around playing video games, don't want to go deer hunting with dad, have a shitty job at, some gas station somewhere, and 2 or 3 kids with 2 or 3 women. And I wonder if they're thinking to themselves, when I was that boy's age, that young man's age, I was working at Ford, and we had a house, and we had our kids, and we had, I had a down payment on a boat, and it's just like, when you undermine the economy for in that particular sector, I think it just turns the soil over for this kind of insanity, maybe that's a book.
You keep voting for people and policies that created this situation.
But the people and the policies are offering you facile
They're offering you a salvo. They're offering you the ability to go make America great again. That's
right, exactly.
That's a continuing theme. So I agree. They play to these people's fears. They're playing to everything, and they hearken. They want to make it seem like we're going to go back to a time that when you could have a regular job and still have an ability to have a down payment on a boat.
Right.
But they eradicated the middle class during the Reagan era.
Right. And they've undermined unions. I mean, all the things that made that life possible are in decline. And not all of them are the fault of Republicans.
One of the phrases that Fishman says, go ahead, about the bosses are paying or whatever, that's gone.
That's because you're so young. Exactly. Well, David Ruffin said it in The Temptation Sign. There was plenty of work and the bosses were paying. And that's the biggest difference between when I grew up, 50s and 60s, when Lengel and I grew up, and now. Now there ain't plenty of work and the bosses are paying. You can go to McDonald's or you can go in the streets, basically.
Right. Well, and God forbid we actually discuss raising the minimum wage to something that is actually livable. I mean, the debate we're having right now over this $15 an hour is just, it should be. Anybody that works full time and still qualifies for public benefits, there's something wrong with that system in my world. I mean, you can have somebody working 50 hours a week at Walmart and they still qualify for Medicaid. They still qualify for food assistance. There's something wrong with this picture. And it's not just Walmart. I mean, it's a
little secret too, but.
Well, Amazon, same thing. I mean, it's I'm sorry, the government shouldn't have to subsidize people who work full time. There's an issue there. And the companies clearly are making enough money. If you look at what's going on out there. So I think they can afford it. And if that means I got to pay 10 cents more for a Big Mac to make sure that we can do that, I don't have a problem with that. But, hey, what do I
agree.
Nobody's going to bitch about paying another even 25, 50 cents for a Big Mac so that people can have it.
Well, they already are. I mean, if you look at food prices, they have been going up. And it's funny, gas prices are going up as well. Biden is getting a lot of heat for gas prices going up. And it's just like, well, actually the economy is starting to recover a little bit here. That's going to happen. Presidents don't typically have any impact on gas prices unless they start an embargo or something like that. But
people are quick to blame the pipeline. If they see the pipeline, gas prices are going up already. The pipeline.
That's horseshit.
Yeah, the pipeline's not in operation.
But they're just looking for a reason to deride and derail what I believe Biden's on. I mean, he has the ability with the momentum that they have. It's almost just like when you have a defender who's on your heels, you can blow right by him. Even at 50 and at 70, Steve, we could blow right by a guy who's sitting on his heels. And that's what I think Biden has an opportunity to do here. But they're going to constantly come back and they're going to do little things like this. Oh, gas prices are going up. Even though they claim a free market society where, the president, unless they institute some overt policy, it's not going to affect it. It's going to be the free market that determines it. But they'll use anything they can.
Well,
continue to,
Wait, listen, Todd, I just want you to know that may be, but I have a reliable source in QAnon that tells me that President Biden calls my gas station on Evergreen and 13 and told him to raise the prices. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
I got to tell you, because they told me on Q.
One thing that I found refreshing this morning, and this was good. They were talking to the president and the first lady as they were putting out their Valentine's Day decorations on the lawn, running out there with their dogs. And somebody asked President Biden, they say, "Hey, are you watching the impeachment trial?" And he said, "No." They said, "Why not?" He said, "I have a job." Which is the best answer I've heard in a long time from the president, because we all know that Donald Trump would sit around watching Fox News all day long.
It's so disconcerting to see like a couple that apparently seem to have genuine affection for one another and dogs in the White House. I mean, the two dogs.
It's nice to see, whether it's fake or not. I mean, they seem to actually like their dogs.
I mean,
not a prop, but,
and they seem to like it.
It's going to be interesting to see this. Real quick, I mean, 200 million vaccines secured yesterday, a new deal there. It looks like we may have enough to have everybody potentially vaccinated by about July, which is a little bit faster than they had thought. We can't yet let everybody get it done, but how is everybody feeling about this? Does it seem like we're getting a better handle on it?
I think we're being more aggressive. I think we're getting a policy from Washington we're getting somewhat. I mean, look, the states can vary on the templates, but there needs to be a template laid out from start to finish to the arm. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing some leadership, which, we saw Trump on, particularly even after the election. I mean, there was still time to go. We saw Trump on the, whining about the election. We saw him golfing, and we're like, no, the pandemic, the numbers were out of control. The Michigan numbers are, there's still people dying, there's still cases, but the cases have gone down significantly.
Well, I still think, though, that the one thing that could trip up this administration real quick, if they don't figure it out, is schools and reopening the schools. Yeah. This is already causing them some heartburn, and they need to get a policy out there quick.
The CDC is issuing something today.
Something today, exactly. That's going to happen later today, but they still have to implement it and do it properly and make sure that people understand it, right, and follow those guidelines. But anyway, all right. Hey, listen, we're running out of time, and we definitely need to do a little bit of work here, and it is time right now for.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
All right, Schmuck of the Week nominee time. Yeah, you like that, Steve? That's pretty good.
I like that a lot. That's very good.
Who wants to go first today? I'm more than happy to go first, unless somebody is itching to talk about this. Nancy?
I was going to go with Mike Shirkey, but then I thought I picked him 2 weeks ago, so I'm going to go with. But he really deserves it this week, and this is anyway. I'm going to go with a writer for the National Review named Andrew McCarthy, who has oxygenated and given new legs to Officer Sicknick trutherism. Which is and of course, Officer Sicknick was one of the Capitol Police who died the night of the riot. In the perhaps most tone deaf case of Reading the Room that I have seen in some time, the very week that we are going through this horrifying video footage of the riot in the Capitol, he publishes something that essentially suggests, he died of like a stroke or something. I mean, he wasn't beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. He died of some other thing. And so it's like all wrong for us to be. And I just thought, man, talk about too soon. So right there.
Well, and somebody else did get hit with that fire extinguisher.
Yes, there was and the hockey sticks and all these other things. I mean, the single worst piece of the video, I think, was the body cam from whoever the cop was that was being beaten with the fire extinguisher. But yeah, I'm going to go with Andrew McCarthy. I mean, there's a thing that you hear a lot on the internet, like silence is always an option. The National Review has more or less distinguished itself, sort of a giant among thieves for being not all in on Trump as a conservative publication. But that I thought was just like, really? So that's it. That's my schmuck.
Okay, that's a good schmuck nominee. Allan Lengel, who do you got?
I'm going to have to go with Bruce Castor Jr., the one of the Trump lawyers. I mean, I don't think, and particularly the two lawyers here, I don't think we've ever seen, for somebody who's supposed to be a brand lawyer or whatever, I don't think we've ever seen such a poor presentation. I mean, it reminded me of a professor, a journalism professor I had, who was so absent-minded. He was blabbling, and one day he starts talking about, I saw a great cartoonist in Indiana speak, and a student raised his hand and says, well, what did he say? Well, he's like, yeah, what did he say? Yeah, I mean, the guy was just, I don't know what was going on with this guy. I mean, any one of us could have done a better job, and excluding the two lawyers, obviously, who would have done a superior job, but even us lay people could have done a much better job.
He sounded like Trump.
Well, I certainly won't be watching his TED Talk, put it that way. He was pretty bad. You know what? I'll go next on this one because I've got a very large group, actually, of people who are my Schmuck of the Week nominees. And these are Republican legislators in 5 states: Arkansas, Iowa, Mississippi, Missouri, and South Dakota. They all filed bills that, if enacted, would cut funding to K through 12 schools and colleges in their state that actually use the 1619 Project as part of their history curriculum.
Oh.
So, because God forbid that we acknowledge that we had slavery in this freaking country. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that really, really bothers me. It's just like censorship is always bad, first of all. But the 1619 Project isn't saying that all white people are evil or that we need to be punished in some way. It is saying that we should perhaps recognize that America was built on the backs of people that didn't want to be here. Mm-hmm. That's all it's saying. And saying, look, if you're going to teach history, teach all of the history. And especially to unveil this stuff in Black History Month, screw you, 5 Republican legislatures from those wonderful states. Just screw you, period. Schmucks of the week.
Well, I think, you should, it's always like the greatest show should go last. You should have gone last with that because I got something very regular that, I've already mentioned them in the show.
That's all right.
And I might have even had him, I may be breaking Nancy's rule because I probably already nominated him in weeks past. But he deserves a renomination. Is Ted Cruz. This guy actually goes and works, if he's a lawyer by trade. And so he actually has violated, there's a clear and inherent conflict in what he's doing, but there's no process with an impeachment process. But if you were, as a lawyer, as a trained lawyer, I would find some, real ethical breakdown in my, moral fabric, if he has any, to go work with the side that he's supposed to decide as an impartial juror. I guess maybe impartial is not necessarily required for an impeachment juror. But, again, and then I go back to, you're defending a guy who said these things and, would continue to say these things about you if you ran amok of him. So I definitely think the 1619 is, if I was going to renominate or if I was going to vote, I'm going with you so far.
Well, hey, you know what? There's always room for Ted Cruz. So it's like political jello. All right, Steve Fishman, who you got?
I was intending when I got up this morning, it was going to be a contest between the great Ted Cruz and the equally execrable Lindsey Graham. But I am nominating someone who stands for, as far as I'm concerned, what we discussed at the beginning of the show, the proposition that there's nothing too low to say when you're thinking of running for president. So Nikki Haley gets my vote by her recent comments. As Craig said, what was that, 10 days after saying, quit picking on the guy, you've beaten up on the guy enough. Now all of a sudden she has found somewhere some spine and now says, maybe this shit was wrong. Maybe this guy was a bad guy. I am sick and tired of people who are doing things for their own advancement, right? And are absolutely tone deaf to how it sounds to those of us who've been listening to her for the last 4 fucking years. So Nikki Haley gets my vote. And although I do have to say, I like that, I'd vote for the guy that wrote the article in the National Review as well. He's probably the champion of the week.
Yeah, well, there's, like I said, there's always good candidates. That's why we never name one over the other, because they're all worthy of consideration. After all, isn't it just an honor to be nominated?
and Nancy gets a gold star for using the word oxygenated.
Oh, very good. Very good. All right. Well, that's going to have to do it for today's program. We certainly appreciate all of you who have been watching and some comments that have been coming in. Keep them coming, everybody. We can find a way to work them into the broadcast. You can put them on the screen, all that good stuff. And, even if you're watching later, keep leaving comments on the Facebook page or on the YouTube page, wherever you're watching it. Just let me know what you think about the broadcast. I always appreciate getting your feedback. Thanks to Lynette Shrimp House for sponsoring this program. Certainly do appreciate them and the great work they're doing there in Highland Park. Just Davison on Woodward. Get some shrimp. Absolutely. Thanks to DeadlineDetroit.com, of course. And think about becoming a member at DeadlineDetroit.com. DeadlineDetroit.com/membership. Become a member today. Help keep this little ragtag bunch going, and some great reporting that's on there right now. Again, the Beaumont stuff just keeps on coming. And it has been the coverage there that Mr. Starkman is doing for us has been stellar. And a lot of people are starting to talk about what is going on in that very important health system here in Southeast Michigan. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast today. I certainly do appreciate his help each and every week. And thanks to my guests, of course, Allan and Nancy from Deadline Detroit. Thank you. Attorneys, Steve Fishman. Well, lawyer Steve Fishman Attorney Todd Perkins. Dave does not like the title attorney, apparently. But
Todd's a much fancier lawyer than me, so that's
well, we appreciate you both for being here and giving us your expertise today. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everybody, and
stay home safely.
The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.